Hi, I'm Brent Janorske. I'm with Couchbase, and I've been with Couchbase as a senior solutions engineer for about 2.5 years. Today's presentation is to bring you up to date with recent Couchbase Server releases and their themes. Rather than just jump right into what's new in 7.1, the current release, first let me level set a bit, given that some of you viewers may be a little behind on your Couchbase release or version. So this slide kind of starts at 6.5 from a timeline perspective. In January of 2020, Couchbase Server 6.5 was released. It's already over 2 years old, which is hard to believe. And in the software vendor industry, that's actually a fairly long time. A lot has transpired since then. In August of 2020, 6.6 was released, and in the late summer of last year, 7.0 became available. Then in May of this year, 7.1, our current release. To say that our engineering team has been busy is certainly an understatement. So back in early 2020, the big news with 6.5 was mainly around the advent of ACID transactions from a key value perspective on multiple documents within Couchbase. Prior to that, we always supported the concept of an ACID transaction on one document. Make this group of changes to this document, save them all, or perform none of the changes. But with 6.5, we answered the bell for being able to ensure that changes to multiple documents could happen in that all or none fashion. Many customers in the NoSQL space were asking for this, and in reality, this was a major release for us for sure. Again, this was key value transactions. Insert the document, upsert this document, delete this document, and commit all work or commit none of it. Now, in addition to that hallmark feature was also the advent of the Index Advisor, which was offered in developer preview in 6.5. This is a unique capability available either from a website or from the Couchbase UI itself, and it offers advice on indexes that could or should be created to speed a query you are developing. About 8 months later, in August of 21, 6.6 was brought to the market. The highlights of this release were a lot of new functionality around the analytics service and also the introduction of flex indexes, which is the ability for the query service, which runs your SQL++ queries, to take advantage of full text search indexes should you be using the full text search service. In the summer of last year, 7.0 became available. This is a major release for us, and it included a fair amount of new functionality. And this slide only highlights just two of them. First, a new way to optionally organize data in Couchbase, scopes and collections. This organizational structure is important because it eases migration from a relational database to a document database such as Couchbase. The idea is that a bucket in Couchbase was always analogous to a database in the relational world, but we couldn't just leave it at that. In the relational world, there are tables within the database which help you organize the data logically. So with Couchbase 7.0, we added collections, which are analogous to tables. Scopes are logical groupings of these collections, so it's pretty similar to the concept of a schema in the relational world. Just as important, we also offered the ability to support ACID transactions via SQL++. Now, if you've been following Couchbase for some time now, you may have heard us use the word nickel in the past, or non-first normal form query language. We are deprecating use of this term in favor of SQL++ to avoid confusion in the market. Nickel could confuse people into thinking it's some sort of proprietary query language you need to learn to use Couchbase, and of course it's not. It's ANSI SQL for use against JSON data, so we think SQL++ is a much better term. So whereas 6.5 transactions were basically bracketing key value operations between begin and commit statements, this is actually in 7.0 true transactions in SQL. So you can bracket your SQL insert, update, and delete statements in a logical transaction. And we've even included support for checkpointing and rolling back, just like a relational database. 7.1 followed in the early part of the summer of this year. Its hallmark feature, I think, was around high data density, really allowing Couchbase to support even larger data sets because each node or instance is able to store much more data per node. We have many customers with data sets measured in terabytes prior to 7.1, so we were always definitely considered a big data solution, but this is really the next big leap for us. There was always a rule of thumb with Couchbase Server prior to 7.1 that any node shouldn't contain more than 2 to 3 terabytes of data. This was largely due to performance constraints around any needed rebalance operations. This has been addressed and relaxed in 7.1, and that optimization will continue downstream with further improvements in 7.2. Outside of this new storage engine, which we call Magma, the other feature I'd like to point out in 7.1 would be further enhancements to user-defined functions so that you can include SQL as well as control flow statements and then invoke them from your application SQL code. Now that sounds a lot like a stored procedure, doesn't it? This really provides us with a capability very similar to stored procedures in the relational world. So already I've mentioned things like scopes and collections to help you organize data similarly to a relational database, and support for ACID SQL transactions against multiple documents. And now I'm talking about user-defined functions where you can have server-side logic similar to a relational database like Oracle or SQL Server. You don't really need to read too hard between the lines to see that Couchbase continues to move the needle towards being a database you should consider not only for the next project that has no SQL requirements like resiliency, performance, and scalability, but also think about Couchbase the next time you assume you need a relational database for a given project. So Couchbase is more than just a document database, right? As you know, we provide you with a multimodal platform that provides you with a lot of functionality. We offer, for example, a key value document store, but also we can function as a high-speed cache, as being memory first is really at our core. We offer a full text search service you can employ. You can employ our query and index services so that you can run SQL queries against JSON. And we also offer an eventing and an analytics service as well. Probably not too much on this slide is new to you. In yellow, though, you see where the focus areas really were for Couchbase 7.1. So if you look at them from top to bottom and left to right, they are those user-defined function improvements that I mentioned previously for server-side processing, performance improvements to the indexing service, along with automatic failover for the indexing service, similar to what we've always offered for the data service within Couchbase. We also have a new native connector for Tableau to connect to the analytics service in Couchbase. And there's that high density storage engine, Magma, as I mentioned, where you can optionally employ this for VLDB and more disk-based use cases. We've also added high availability for analytics to really make the platform highly available across the gamut of services. And in addition, support for ARM processors, which a lot of our customers were asking for. So I hope this has given you a good overview of what's new with Couchbase and what's occurred over the last couple of years. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Thank you very much.